Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This we're going over the 7-game NBA slate for tonight on Draftkings, and to be honest, I was even debating on making this video because I assume everyone's going to be watching football today because I'm not sure how many people will end up actually watching this, but I figured I'd make one anyway because they had some extra time before the game started. Before we continue though, if you guys could leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Really helps me out, really appreciate it. You can also follow me on Twitter at ChrisPino16. And if you're interested in the spreadsheets about every single night for the NBA season, links are in the description below for my Patreon. You get projections, the stat sheet, the defense versus position chart, my cheat sheet, and my Discord chat. Links are in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into today's slate. And I gotta say, this slate's pretty top heavy. There's a lot of good spend up options, and then there's not very many good cheap options as of right now. So we'll figure it out. If Karl Anthony Towns happens to be out, then obviously that would open up some more just some more value options in general. But we're going to go down the list here. So we're going to start off with James Harden at 11,600. Can you play Giannis? Yes, you can play Giannis every single night. He is insane. He has a 1.92 points per minute, near 39% usage rate. He should have no problem smashing New York. I just worry about blowout potential here versus New York. I don't know if it's going to be on here from the last 10 games. Actually, it was. So last time he played New York, he only played 22 minutes, had won 132 to 88. 22 minutes, 54 fantasy points, which, yeah, it's great, but he's also 11,700, so we need more than 22 minutes out of Giannis. I think most likely scenario is that the Bucks do get to a big lead here. They are 12.5-point favorites, and I have a hard time seeing him play over 30 minutes in this game, so I do think that caps his upside. So that's why I'm looking to spend down 100 more for James Harden, or I should say 100 less, for James Harden at 11,600. I prefer him to Giannis tonight. And after some lackluster games, his price actually came down from near 13,000 down to the 11,000 range, mid 11,000. He's 11,600, and this is honestly a pretty fair price for a guy like James Harden. So it puts him right back on the radar here for me. And this game should be great for fantasy purposes. We have a 236-point over/under, which is highest on the entire slate. We have a 6-point spread as well, so this game should be a tighter, just more back and forth game than the Bucks game. I don't think this game really gets out of hand, and it should be pretty back and forth, so that's why I'm liking James Harden a little bit more here. And both teams play extremely fast. Houston's third in pace of play, and Phoenix is sixth, so I'm expecting a little bit of a track meet here, and I do expect a lot of fantasy points to be scored, and Vegas would as well with the high over/under and tight spread. Phoenix is also bottom half in the league defensively, as is Houston, so again, another reason that there should be a pretty high point total in this game. And they do struggle with guards. They rank 21st versus point guards and shooting guards. And Harden has still had at least 50 fantasy points in the last while, 51, 53, 59, which it's pretty good when you can get 3 straight 50-point games and it feels like you've sucked. I mean, to be honest, that's just how good James Harden is. Then you have the 84-point outing versus Orlando, 80-point outing versus Cleveland, then 52, 57, then 47, then 78 and 85. So honestly, he's still been pretty good. And 11,600, this is the cheapest he's been in at least the last 10 games. He's been around 12K plus. So definitely like James Harden tonight. My favorite spend up on the entire slate. He's got a 38% usage rate, 1.65 points per minute, getting about 38 minutes per game, which is massive. So he's not as high on the point per minute department as Giannis, but he typically plays a lot more minutes than Giannis does. So James Harden, despite the high price tag, my favorite spend up of the entire slate. Then you could also look at Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know if he's going to end up playing or not. We'll have to see how he goes around shoot around or whatever. I know he's questionable as of right now. No idea if he's going to play, but if he's a full go, I love the spot for him. Minnesota plays at the fastest pace of play in the league, and Portland is 12th, so this game does have some pretty high upside. There's no total yet. The last time I looked, it might be up now. Here, let me pause this and I'll take a look. It might be up. Okay, so it is up. It's at 229.5, so it's a pretty high over-under. I believe that's second or third highest on the slate. So this should be a pretty good game environment as long as Karl Anthony Towns is good to go for Towns here. And he's been great this season, obviously. 1.55 points per minute, 28% usage rate. It's a good matchup down low versus Portland. They rank 28th versus big men. Karl Anthony Towns is arguably the best center in the NBA. So, gotta like Towns here. He'll see 35-plus minutes if he's healthy. He's got 60-plus point upside any single night. So, Karl Anthony Towns, I'm not sure if he'd be a cash game play for me coming off an injury, but definitely would have interest in Karl Anthony Towns and GPPs. I think he's fine in both, though. Andre Drummond at 10,300. This honestly might be the safer cash game play because I just don't see how he doesn't crush versus Chicago. And there's a lot of high-end guys I like, so I do apologize about talking about every single one of them, but I can do whatever I want here. So that's what we're going to do. I love Drumstick last night, but Pistons got blown out of the water even when Kemba scored 2 points. And if you guys played Kemba, that was rough just watching that game. He didn't make one shot that game. Not one. He made 2 free throws. That was it. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen. It was probably his worst game ever. But that happens sometimes, especially with no Gordon Hayward. It just didn't make sense. But that's how fantasy goes sometimes. I do expect Griffin and Kennard to be back, but it doesn't really change anything for me. His numbers are pretty similar with them on or off the court, so it really doesn't change anything. I do love the matchup down low versus Chicago. He should have a monster game here. Chicago is 30th versus centers, one of the worst rebounding teams in the league, 1.42 points per minute this season. I think like fourth or fifth game of the season, Drummond had like 74 fantasy points versus these guys. In the one game, he was a little lackluster, but no reason Drummond can't crush Chicago. We saw Harrell recently just crush them, and Andre Drummond, there's no one that can contend with them down low on the Bulls. So love Drummond quite a bit. Think he's a fantastic option. Also think Joel Embiid's a fantastic. I'm going to talk about pretty much all these guys because they're all in good spots. You're going to have to just pick a couple that you like, but I'll talk about it and give you guys my thoughts on him. But Joel Embiid, I think he's another fantastic play here. There's nothing not to like. Really, the only thing that you might not like is that they're 12.5 point favorites, so there might be some blowout risk here, and you might not get a full complement of minutes. But if this game does stay close, I mean, Embiid should smash here. He's facing Washington, and they have a 122-point team total, which is tied for the highest on the slate with the Houston Rockets. And this is a great matchup versus Washington. They're second worst defensively. They rank 26th versus centers, and they have absolutely no one that can defend him down there. They have so many injuries down low right now. Wagner's hurt, Rui's hurt, and Thomas Bryant's hurt, so I don't see who is going to be able to guard him down low. I know they have that AP guy and Yamahimi, but it's still Embiid. He should smash. It's also a pace-up spot too. Washington's 5th in pace of play, while Philly is 20th. He's got over a 31% usage rate this season, 1.51 points per minute. I don't see how you can't like Joel Embiid here. The only problem is there's just 3 really good spend-up centers on this slate. You got Drummond, you got Karl-Anthony Towns if he plays. You have Joel Embiid, so it's a tough decision to make. But Embiid is the cheapest of the 3. And he's honestly got pretty much similar upside. So love all 3 of these guys. It's going to be a tough choice because they're all pretty much the same price. So just depends on who you have the best feel on. Embiid's got blowout potential and Towns might not play. So that might just leave you to Drummond if you want to play one of these 3 centers. Paul George, I did not see any confirmed news on Kawhi Leonard, but I've seen some news that he may sit this game. So if he does happen to sit this, because this is a back-to-back, and I don't really see why he'd want to play San Antonio, he might sit this game, and then Paul George would be the only guy there. And if Paul George is the only guy there, we definitely have to have interest, because with Kawhi Leonard off the court, he has over a 30% usage rate, over 1.3 points per minute, and we've seen him have big upside games, even with Kawhi Leonard playing. He played in that game versus Houston, and George still had 38 minutes, 59 fantasy points. So if Leonard's out, Paul George would become a pretty solid play. Now, he's priced up from usual, so that does hurt his value, or capped his upside a little bit, but Paul George without Kawhi Leonard's always a pretty solid play, so someone to definitely have interest in as long if Kawhi Leonard happens to be out. Haven't seen any definitive news on that, but it is a back-to-back, and I wouldn't expect Kawhi to play in one of these games, so he might just sit the first game out. Damian Lillard, he would be okay in GPPs, not really want to look to him in cash games. If Carmelo happens to not play, that would open up some usage just for guys like Lillard, Whiteside, and McCollum. So you could look his way in GPPs. He's had 2 good games in a row. Of course, I played him versus Phoenix when he had 35 points, and the 2 games after that, 61 and 51. So Lillard would be on my radar for GPPs. He's decently cheap compared to a lot of the guys I just talked about. But Russell Westbrook, I like him at 9,400 quite a bit. I do think he's a very, very good play. And I really am sorry for talking about all these high-end options, but if they're good plays, I'm going to talk about them. I don't care how many there is. But they're just all in such good spots, and I gotta love Russ tonight. He had 2 monster games in a row. He played 40 minutes in each game, and he had 60 fantasy points, 40 real-life points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. Then the game before that, 53 points, 31 real-life points, 10 boards, 4 assists, 1 block, 1 steal. Gotta like Russ here, and honestly, I love the point per dollar just from like James Harden, because he's only 9,400, and he's actually outscored James Harden a couple times so far, so don't hate Russ here. He's got a 32% usage rate, 1.34 points per minute. It's an elite matchup versus Phoenix. They rank 21st versus point guards. This game should be a track meet. It's the highest total in the slate. 9,400 Russell Westbrook. I think that's a pretty good price. So I think he's going to be the cover for my video. I haven't made it yet, but definitely like Russell Westbrook. I think he's a fantastic option tonight. And then Bradley Beal. Philly's really good versus wings, so I'm probably going to pass there. Kawhi Leonard, I think there's a good chance he sits this game. Hassan Whiteside, he's fine in GPPs, just not someone I really want to target, but Minnesota's about average when it comes to centers, but past 2 games, 50 points, 41 points. Of course, I played in the game, he got 35 points. That's just my luck sometimes. 59 points versus Denver, though, 49, 42, 41, 59. He's averaging about 1.3 points per minute, 21% usage rate, should see 30-plus minutes. His minutes are coming up from earlier in the season because he was averaging only about like 28, 29 minutes per game. And if you just look at his recent minutes, 34, 32, 32, 26, but that game was a blowout, and 35, 31, 33, 33. So I like the minutes he's been getting. He's a really good player. So Hassan Whiteside, he's got 20-20 upside. I mean, 33 points, 11 boards, 23 rebounds, 16 points. So I do like Hassan Whiteside in GPPs, but I wouldn't call him a core play for me. If you want to stack this game up, say you want to play Harden and Westbrook, I have no problem running it back with Devin Booker. We know the guy's got high upside, and Houston is dead last when it comes to shooting guards. So I think Devin Booker's in a good spot here. The only problem is his floor is a little lower than I'd like it to be, so that's why he's a GPP play only for me, but his ceiling is extremely high. I mean, 27 points, 39 points, 43, 50, 71, then 28, 37, 37, 45, 18. High upside, low floor, but that's what you kind of expect from Devin Booker. The guy can get hot, though, and just start blazing points. And I do have some interest in him. He has not hit a 3 in the past 2 games, but I think he's a high upside play for tonight, but definitely has a lower floor. Ben Simmons versus Washington, if you just want to get exposure to this game. I'm not the biggest Ben Simmons fan, although he did have a good game for me versus New Orleans. We had 55 points, but 36, 38, 35. Yeah, I'm more interested in him when someone like Embiid's out or one of those guys, but that's not the case. So I really don't have too much interest in Ben Simmons unless you're just doing a full game stack. Clint Capella, I think he's a pretty fine option tonight at 8K. So he's just pretty much a model of consistency. Now, he does have a couple 20-point games mixed in here, but other than that, he's been pretty good. 36, 48, 46, 37, 34, 58, 58. Then before that, he was on absolute fire. But this is a good matchup for Capella. Phoenix is 23rd versus centers, and I definitely want exposure to this game. So I could see Clint Capella actually having a pretty solid game tonight. So definitely someone on my radar as of right now at 8K, just if you want to get exposure to this game. And really, to be honest, after that, it gets a little ugly. We're going to have to wait for some injury news. If Karl-Anthony Towns happens to be out, you could look to upgrade Andrew Wiggins. It's a good matchup versus Portland, one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. The game should be played pretty fast. McCollum would be somewhat interesting with if Carmelo Anthony got ruled out, but not a ton of interest at 7,300. You could look at Blake Griffin, who's listed as questionable, but I do expect him to be back in this game. If he's not, obviously we can't play him, but if he is back, it's a good matchup versus Chicago, but I personally don't want to play Blake Griffin because I just hate him. He's been awful this season, really. I mean, he's had some okay games, 38 points, but then 28, 20, 32, 34, 42 is not too bad, but it's an elite matchup versus Chicago. They do rank 29th versus power forward, so if he's in, it's a cheap price point, but, man, I just do not like playing Blake Griffin. I cannot trust him, so he'd be only GPPs for me. You could also look at, I mean, there's just not a lot of good plays. See if any Carmelo Anthony news, just questionable, so. Nothing on that yet. I mean, Jeff Teague, he would become in play if Karl-Anthony Towns got ruled out, 5,900. Although he's been pretty disappointing the past 2 games with Karl-Anthony Towns ruled out, 20 points and 22 points. And if you look before that, he had 52-point game, 36, 28, 55. I mean, if he's out, though, got to have some interest in Jeff Teague. Price came down a little bit. Good matchup versus Portland. The game should be pretty good for fantasy purposes. You could look at Robert Covington at 5,700. He had a decent game. The one game versus New Orleans, we had 35 points, then 22 points versus the tough matchup versus Denver. But he would become in play if Anthony Towns is ruled out. You could look at DiVincenzo. I think I said that right. It's a tough name to pronounce, but he's actually been pretty good. 23 points, 38 points, 33 points. Again, not too much interest, and there is some blowout risk in this game. There's just not a lot of good plays down here. I apologize if I'm just running through this, but there's not a lot of guys I like, so hopefully we can get some more injury news. And again, I'll update all this throughout the day. But Wagner's listed as questionable, but I don't really expect him to play tonight. If he does, it doesn't really change too much for me. Let's see. Gorgie Dang at 4,600. If Karl-Anthony Towns is out, I mean, 4,600 is not too bad of a price for Gorgie Dang. He's been good the past 2 games, 25 points, 29 points. Pretty good on a point per minute basis. That's just averaging a little bit over a point per minute the past 2 games. And has double-double upside. Great matchup versus Portland. They're 28th versus center. So if Karl-Anthony Towns is out, Gorgie Dang would become a pretty solid play at 4,600. You could also look at PJ Tucker. He's not the most exciting play, but he's 4,500, and the guy does have upside. He plays big minutes every single night, 37 minutes, 38, 41, 35, 35, 35, 39, 39, 52 minutes versus San Antonio. That's the most I've ever seen in my life, at least this year. But the guy's solid. I mean, he's got 30-plus point upside. He does pretty much a little bit of everything. Rebounds, gets a couple assists, blocks, steals, corner threes. That's what he does. So don't mind PJ Tucker as a lineup filler. It's just cheap exposure to this game. So I think at 4,500, he's honestly a pretty solid play. And then after this, it's just getting a little gross at this point, to be honest. You could look at his teammate Daniel House, who I don't think is too bad of an option at 3,800, I believe. Yeah, he's 3,800. Like PJ Tucker, he's going to see big minutes. Not as big of minutes, but pretty darn close. 35 minutes, 27, 34, 34, 26, 34, 30. Now, he's been absolutely dreadful. He was pretty good in the beginning of the season, but past few games, 23, 14, 19, 9, 12, 17, 17, 23, 36, 22. I mean, he's going to grade out as a good point per dollar option, but he does not have a lot of upside. You just kind of got to hope he lucks his way into like 15 plus points. 3,800 is a good game environment, so I don't hate taking a chance at Daniel House, but I would prefer PJ Tucker if you can afford it, but I understand that salary might be a little bit of a struggle there. And if I keep getting Karl-Anthony Towns and Carmelo mixed up. If Carmelo Anthony happens to be out in this game, you could look at Kent Bazemore. He's 4,600, just open up some more minutes overall. Did end up playing 32 minutes last night, 19 fantasy points. Not a great point per minute guy, but again, there's not a lot of cheap options. This game is pretty solid for fantasy purposes. It's also one of the late games, so I wouldn't hate Kent Bazemore at 4,600. Not my favorite play in the world, but again, there's a lack of value options on this slate. And again, if you think this Milwaukee Bucks game gets to a blowout, I'm not sure how to say his name, to be honest, but you could play Pat here. If you think he gets extended run, I'm trying to look at the last game he played against New York. He had 18 minutes, 19 fantasy points. He was also only 4,300. Now he's down to 3,100. If this game, like I said, blows out and there's no Eric Bledsoe, it just opens up some more minutes overall. I don't hate it. If he can get close to 20 minutes and he can get flirt with 20 fantasy points, 3,100, that's not a bad play. So Pat's someone, I'm going to assume it's Connaughton. I apologize if anyone's a big Pat Connaughton fan. I just don't know how to pronounce his name very well, but I think he could flirt with 20 points, and if he could flirt with 20 minutes, and if he can get 15 to 20 points at 3,100, that's not a bad play. I mean, you could also look at Ilyasova, who I believe is 3,300. He might get some extended run. Let me see how many minutes he got last time versus New York. So he only had 14 minutes, 12 fantasy points. We'll have to see. I mean, I'm not expecting a lot here, but 3,300 if you think the game gets blown out. You could look for some extended run from some of these bench pieces. But really, that's going to be about it for this video. I apologize. I pretty much talked about a lot of high-end options, but as of right now, there's not a lot of good value options. Maybe some more will open up throughout the day. And if they do, they will be on my spreadsheet. But anyway, guys, I'm going to leave you guys with that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to leave a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go watch some football. And I'm sure you guys are as well, so hope you guys enjoy the game. Hope you guys do well in fantasy if you did play fantasy football or DFS for the Saturday slate. And wish you guys the best of luck. Have a great Saturday. Get your Christmas shopping done, and I'll see you guys in the next video.